She was raised in a small place where the land felt older than the people who walked on it. Every morning looked the same, dust in the air. A slow sun rising over fields that never seemed to end. She learned early that life was not loud, it was quiet. And steady and often hard, her days were shaped by simple rules: work before rest, respect before desire, silence before questions. Lived with family who believed that a good life came from obedience. They believed a young woman should listen more than speak and endure more than dream. She accepted this without anger, because it was all she knew. She helped with chores from sunrise to nightfall. She cooked, cleaned, carried water, and mended clothes. Her hands grew strong, even though her voice stayed soft. She had never traveled far. The road beyond town felt like another world. Stories came from passing traders and tired men who stopped for water. They spoke of distant places of storms and wealth and danger. She listened from the doorway, never stepping closer, never asking questions. Her heart felt curious, but also afraid. Curiosity was something she kept hidden like a secret. She was not sure she was allowed to own. She had never known romance, not the kind spoken about in whispers, not the kind sung about in old songs. Love was something practical. Where she came from, it meant safety, food, and shelter. It meant choosing what would last instead of what would thrill. She had been taught that feelings could not be trusted, and that a good decision often felt heavy instead of joyful. The cowboy entered her life without ceremony. He came with dust on his boots and the smell of open land on his clothes. He did not smile much. He did not speak more than needed. He stood straight. It looked people in the eye when he talked. It was slow and careful, as if words cost him something. People said he owned land beyond the ridge, a working ranch with cattle and a small house built by his own hands. They said he had lost family long ago and kept to himself. They said he was fair and honest and strong enough to survive any season. None of this came from him. He never spoke of himself. So the proposal was not romantic. It was direct and simple. He needed a wife. She needed security. Her family needed relief from struggle. The words were spoken in a small room with other people present. There was no music, no tears, no laughter. Only quiet nods and measured breaths. She felt fear but not panic. She felt sadness, but not grief. Mostly she felt uncertainty, like standing at the edge of a wide field, not knowing where to step. First she looked at the cowboy and tried to imagine her life. Beside him she could not picture love, but she could picture work. She could picture waking early and sleeping tired. She could picture endurance. When she agreed, her voice barely carried, but it was firm. Enough to be heard, enough to be final. The choice changed her future in that moment, though she did not yet understand how deeply the days before. The marriage passed slowly. She folded her clothes and packed what little she owned. She said quiet goodbyes to familiar walls and paths. She walked the land one last time, feeling the soil beneath her feet. She wondered if she would ever feel this place again. As home on the morning she left, the sky was pale and still. The cowboy waited with a horse and a small wagon. He did not rush her. He did not speak unless spoken to. When she climbed into the wagon, her hands trembled, but she kept them folded in her lap. The road stretched long and empty. She watched the town fade behind them. She felt something tighten in her chest, not from regret, but from finality. Some things once left behind could never be returned to in the same way as they traveled. She noticed small things about him: the way he checked the sky, the way he slowed for rough ground, the way he offered water without asking. She said little, but she observed everything. Silence between them did not feel cruel. It felt cautious, like both were waiting for the right moment to breathe freely. The ranch appeared late in the day, low buildings against wide land. Cattle moved slowly in the distance. The house was simple, made of wood worn by weather. It looked strong, not beautiful. Built to last, not to impress. This would be her new life. She stepped down from the wagon and felt the earth beneath her boots. She did not know what awaited her inside that house, or inside the man who would be her husband, but she knew this much: nothing would ever be the same again. That night she lay awake, listening to the sounds of unfamiliar land wind through grass, distant animals, the quiet creak of wood settling. She felt small, but also awake in a way she had never felt before. Her fate was no longer decided by habit alone. It was unwritten and waiting. She closed her eyes, knowing the morning would come whether she was ready or not. She woke to the sound of wind across the fields. The air smelled different here, fresher, yet sharper. She stepped outside the small house and felt the rough wood under her. Hands, she looked at the land stretching endlessly before her and felt both awe and unease. She had never seen so much open space in her life. The cowboy was already working. He moved steadily, checking fences, feeding animals. He did not speak much, but she noticed small gestures. He paused to lift a bucket for her. He nodded toward the water trough as if to say, "You will learn." She nodded back, not knowing if she should speak or remain silent. Days passed slowly, but each carried a new lesson. She learned to feed chickens, to gather eggs, to milk cows, and to cook over open fire. She learned to mend fences and carry heavy loads. Her body ached in ways she had never known, but with the ache came a strange sense of pride. She could see the work she had done and know it would last. The cowboy observed her quietly. He did not offer praise, but sometimes he would stand beside her, letting her know he was there when he spoke. It was in short sentences, telling her what needed to be done. She listened carefully, trying to remember every word. Meals were quiet. She ate in the kitchen while he worked outside, or sat at the table reading small books of records she had never shared space with anyone in this way, and it felt strange. She missed her family, yet she also felt a new independence. She was learning to take care of herself in a way she had never imagined. The nights were lonelier than the days. The house creaked and groaned in the wind. She often lay awake thinking of her old home. She wondered if she had made the right choice, if she could survive here, if she could ever belong. Yet she also felt curiosity about the man she now shared a life with. She wanted to understand him, but did not know how to begin. She began to notice small details, the way he looked at the sky when a storm approached, the way he moved with the land like it was a part of him, the way he spoke to animals as if they understood him. She realized he had lived alone for a long time, and that trust came slowly to him. She wondered if he would ever trust her. There were moments when their hands brushed while carrying water or feeding cattle, small moments that made her heart beat faster, but she did not know how to react. She was learning that life here was not about grand gestures, but about small acts done every day. She started to understand that love might grow quietly in these moments. She missed friends and the small, the town where life was predictable. She missed the familiar streets and the faces that recognized her. She also began to feel a strange connection to this land, the open fields, the endless sky, and the rhythm of work. She began to feel that she might be able to belong here, even if she did not yet feel at home. One evening, the cowboy sat beside her on the porch. They watched the sun sink behind the hills in silence. She wanted to speak, but words felt heavy. She realized that in this silence she felt a kind of comfort. She did not have to explain herself. He did not have to explain himself. They simply shared the moment together. Seasons began to change. She learned to prepare for cold nights and hot days. She learned to predict the weather. By watching the clouds and the wind, she learned that survival depended on patience and observation. She also learned that she had more strength than she had ever imagined. She began to anticipate the cowboy's movements, noticing when he would rise, when he would pause. She began to understand his routines and to adapt herself to them. She began to feel that the house and land were no longer completely foreign. They were a place she could walk through with confidence. Yet there were times when loneliness crept in, nights when she missed conversation and laughter, days when the work seemed endless and her muscles ached. She remembered the small town and her family and wondered if she could ever feel fully at home here. She realized that belonging was something she would have to build. Slowly, the cowboy noticed when she struggled, but he rarely offered words. Instead, he would show her by example how to lift a heavy bucket or mend a fence. He allowed her to make mistakes and then quietly corrected her. She began to feel that patience could be a form of care. She also began to feel that love did not need to be spoken to be real. She started to sleep better as she learned the rhythms of the ranch. She rose with the sun and found comfort in predictable work, yet the unpredictability of weather and animals reminded her that life here demanded alertness and respect. She learned to trust her instincts and to act with quiet confidence. She began to notice the way the cowboy treated his animals, how he would check on them before his own needs, how he seemed to understand when they were ill or in pain. She began to understand that kindness could be quiet and that strength and gentleness could exist together. Occasionally, neighbors visited, bringing news or supplies. She felt nervous in their presence, used to small-town chatter. She listened more than she spoke. She learned to observe and to judge character carefully. She realized that the world outside the ranch could be both welcoming and dangerous, and that she would need wisdom to navigate it. Winter approached, and the days grew shorter. The cowboy worked steadily, preparing for the cold. He expected her to help with stacking wood and feeding animals. She rose early and worked late. She grew stronger, her body and mind learning endurance. She also learned that her presence mattered even without words. She felt a sense of pride in being part of the ranch life. One quiet morning, the cowboy stopped and watched her work. He said little, but his eyes held something she could not name. She felt that he was acknowledging her not as a helper, but as a partner. She did not know if it was love or respect or both, but it warmed her in a way that was unfamiliar. She began to dream of small things, the thought of a future here, not perfect but bearable. Oh, the thought of being able to face difficulties and survive. Oh, the thought of finding connection in quiet moments. She realized that life here was testing her, but also teaching her. She was changing, becoming someone stronger and more aware. Nights were still long, but no longer entirely lonely. She could hear the rhythm of the land, the breathing of animals, the quiet of a man who had survived. Much she began to feel that she might survive too, that she might find peace here, that life could slowly open new possibilities, even in a place that once felt impossible. She noticed herself smiling more often in small ways. When she learned to do a task she had struggled with, when she observed the beauty of the land at dawn, when she felt the quiet understanding between her and the cowboy. She began to understand that connection could grow without words, and that patience could be the seed of trust. Winter came fully, bringing snow and cold nights. She learned to layer herself in warmth, to plan her work with care, to preserve food and energy. She also learned to enjoy small pleasures, the smell of firewood, the warmth of a shared meal, the soft sound of wind against the house. She began to find contentment in simple things. Through all of this, she learned about the cowboy too. Not his past entirely, but the way he responded to hardship, the way he could be silent yet attentive, the way he would act without needing to be asked. She began to realize that life with him required observation and thoughtfulness, and that those who could adapt would be rewarded with quiet companionship. By the end of the first winter, she felt she had grown. She was no longer entirely the girl who had left the town. She had endured long days of work and long nights of reflection. She had observed and adapted. She had learned patience, respect, and subtle understanding. She realized that this life was teaching her not only survival, but something deeper, a quiet resilience and an awareness of connection. The cowboy and she continued side by side, not yet friends, not yet lovers, but neither strangers. She knew there was still much to learn about him and herself. She knew that her place here was earned, not given. She knew that every day presented a chance to grow, to observe, and to act. Life on the ranch was not easy, but it was alive. She felt the pulse of the land, the rhythm of work, the presence of someone who was neither cruel nor distant, but quietly demanding. She began to understand that this partnership would not come from words, but from deeds, from patience, and from endurance. She lay awake that night, listening to the wind. Over snow-covered fields, she felt a small sense of accomplishment in having endured her first winter. She felt anticipation for the next day, for the next season. She realized that life here was slow, but it was teaching her more than she had ever known, and that perhaps the unknown future held more promise than she had feared. Spring arrived slowly, bringing warmth and new life to the ranch. The snow melted, leaving patches of green and mud. She watched as the land awakened. She could see buds on trees and new grass for the cattle. She felt the change in her body and mind, as if the season had entered her. The cowboy began preparing for the busy months of planting and repair. She learned to handle tools she had never touched to work in fields that demanded strength and attention. She carried water, repaired fences, and helped with feeding the animals. Her muscles were stronger and her mind sharper. She began to feel that she could meet the demands of this life. Neighbors visited more frequently now, bringing news of markets and work. She listened carefully, learning which tasks were urgent, which advice was helpful. She began to feel a small sense of belonging in the larger community. Though she had spent little time in the outside world, she began to understand its rhythms and expectations. The cowboy remained quiet as always, but sometimes he would pause and give a nod or a look that said more than words could. He noticed when she struggled and offered guidance without judging. Her confidence grew slowly as she learned to anticipate needs, to prepare for tasks, and to make small decisions on her own. Shy discovered small joys in daily routines, the way the sunlight reflected off wet grass in the morning, the soft sounds of birds calling to each other, the warmth of a fire after a long day, the satisfaction of a job completed. She began to understand that life was made of these moments, and that noticing them could bring quiet happiness. She and the cowboy shared more time together now in small ways. They ate meals near each other, walked together across fields, and worked side by side in silence. She began to feel a connection, not spoken, but present, in shared effort and attention. She realized that trust and companionship could grow in small gestures and quiet understanding. Challenges arose as the work of the ranch continued. Unexpected storms came, threatening crops and livestock. She learned to act quickly to protect what they had. She watched the cowboy handle difficulties with calm and careful planning. She began to understand the importance of steady hands and patient thought. She learned that panic could worsen situations, and that steady work could make survival possible. She felt pride in her own progress and in the life they were building together. She could see the results of her efforts in repaired fences, filled feed troughs, and healthy animals. She began to understand that she had a role in shaping their life, and that her contributions mattered even if they were not celebrated. The community brought other lessons too. She observed how people interacted, how trust was earned, how respect was given and withheld. She learned the value of listening and observing more than speaking. She began to feel more capable in social situations and more confident in her own judgment. Through all this, she observed the cowboy closely. Not his past, but his character, the way he made decisions, the way he treated animals, the way he dealt with difficulty. She noticed moments of quiet reflection and rare flashes of humor. She began to understand him in small pieces and to recognize that knowing someone fully took time and patience. She faced moments of fear, 2 nights when storms raged and animals panicked, days when work seemed endless and her strength was tested. She felt loneliness and doubt, but she also learned to rely on her own abilities. She began to trust herself and to understand that independence could coexist with connections. She learned that love might not arrive suddenly, but grow through shared experience. She noticed small signs of care from the cowboy and responded with her own quiet acts of thoughtfulness. She learned that gestures mattered more than words, and that trust and respect could form the foundation for deeper connection. Spring passed into summer, bringing longer days and hotter sun. She learned to pace herself, to conserve energy, and focus on important tasks. She understood the rhythm of life on the ranch and began to anticipate needs before they were stated. She felt a sense of competence and belonging in her growing skills and understanding. She began to dream in small ways about the future, not in grand gestures, but in practical hopes about managing the land, caring for animals, and finding quiet moments of happiness. She began to accept that life here would be different from the past. She had left, but not necessarily worse. She was learning to find joy in the daily work and in small connections. She noticed the cowboy showing small changes too. He began to share small stories about his past. He asked her opinion on minor decisions. He offered guidance with a gentleness she had not seen before. She began to feel a bond forming that was neither rushed nor forced, but emerging naturally from shared experience. The children of neighbors sometimes came to visit. She observed their interactions, learning patience and empathy. She helped guide them and played quietly. She noticed the cowboy watching with a quiet approval. She began to understand that care could extend beyond oneself, and that nurturing could be an expression of strength. Summer storms came unexpectedly. She learned to act quickly to protect animals and crops. She worked with the cowboy side by side, often through rain and mud. She realized that danger was part of life, and that courage was not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. She felt herself growing in confidence and resiliency. Evenings brought reflection. They would sit quietly on the porch or walk across fields at dusk. She noticed the changing sky, the soft sounds of insects and birds, and the quiet presence of another human being. She began to appreciate silence as a space for understanding and connection. She faced choices, two simple ones about work schedules and small priorities, complicated ones about how to respond to neighbors, or the unexpected. She began to trust her judgment more and more. She realized that living on the ranch required constant decision-making and that each choice had consequences. She began to understand the rhythm of the cowboy, his quiet moments of reflection, his bursts of sudden activity, his attention to details she might have overlooked. She started to anticipate his needs and to feel the beginnings of communication without words. She realized that a shared life could be built from observation and responsiveness. Her body and mind adapted to the ranch. She felt strength and endurance she had never known. Her mind grew sharp, noticing small changes in weather, in animals and land. She began to feel capable and resilient, and to take pride in her own ability to contribute to survival through the long summer days. She began to feel small signs of connection with the cowboy. Trust and respect were growing. She noticed the way he acknowledged her efforts in small gestures and looks. She learned to respond with her own acts of care and attention. She began to feel that she might be more than a helper. She might be a partner. She found beauty in the ordinary moments of sunlight on water, the smell of earth after rain, the sound of animals at work, the quiet presence of another human being. She began to understand that these moments carried their own kind of love, and that happiness could be found in simple awareness. She began to look forward to each day, even with its hard work. She felt a sense of purpose in tending to the land and animals and learning to live alongside the cowboy. She realized that endurance and attention and patience were creating a life that was real and tangible, and that her place in it was earned. Summer ended with harvest. She and the cowboy worked tirelessly collecting crops, preparing equipment, and preparing for the cooler months. She felt fatigue, but also satisfaction. She could see the results of their work and know that they had survived and even thrived through challenges. She noticed herself smiling quietly at small successes, at a task completed, at a moment of connection, at the beauty of land at dawn. She began to realize that life here had a quiet joy that was steady and lasting, and that this might be the kind of happiness she had been searching for. Autumn arrived, bringing cooler air and shorter days. She noticed the colors changing in the trees and fields. The land shifted from green to gold and brown. She felt a change within herself, too. A deeper understanding of life on the ranch and of the man she now lived with. The cowboy worked steadily, preparing for winter, repairing fences, checking animals, and storing food. She joined him in each task, learning new skills and refining old ones. She discovered that endurance was not just physical, but mental. She learned to anticipate problems, to plan ahead, and to act calmly in difficult moments. The bond between them grew in quiet ways. They shared more looks, more small gestures of understanding and care. She began to see him not only as her husband, but as a partner in every sense of the word. They did not need words to communicate about work or the needs of the animals. They had learned to read each other in subtle ways. Challenges arose unexpectedly. A sudden storm threatened part of the herd, and a fence collapsed. She and the cowboy worked together through the night, repairing damage and calming frightened animals. She discovered a new depth of patience in herself, and a new respect for his calm determination. She realized that they could survive difficulties together. She felt her confidence growing. She could carry heavy loads, handle tools, and anticipate the needs of animals and land. She noticed her own thoughtfulness and problem-solving improving. She began to realize that she had become capable and resilient, and that her contributions mattered deeply. Evenings became times of quiet reflection. They would sit on the porch, watching the sun sink behind hills. She noticed the colors changing, the shadows lengthening, and the subtle movement of animals preparing for night. She began to understand that connection could exist in silence, and that companionship could grow without words. Neighbors visited occasionally, bringing news and trade. She interacted with them more confidently now, understanding their ways and how to navigate conversations. She began to feel more at ease in the wider community. and to notice. How small interactions could build trust and respect. She realized that she was not only surviving but becoming part of the community. The cowboy began sharing small stories from his past, not tragedies or regrets, but simple moments that shaped his life. She listened quietly, learning about the world he had lived in. She realized that trust and openness could be earned, and that sharing memories created connection and understanding. She began to respond with her own small stories from her life growing up. She noticed small changes in herself too. She was no longer afraid of hard work or of the long days. She could handle the unexpected and find solutions. She began to feel pride in herself. In a sense of ownership in the life they were building together, she felt capable not just in tasks, but in understanding and supporting the man she now shared her life with. Autumn storms tested them further. Trees fell and animals strayed. She learned to act quickly and calmly. She noticed the cowboy watching her with quiet approval. She felt that she had earned a place not only as a worker, but as a trusted companion. She realized that partnership was built in shared struggle and mutual respect. The days brought small joys, to the smell of rain on soil, the warmth of a fire, the quiet companionship of sharing work. She began to appreciate these small things as moments of life that carried their own kind of happiness. She learned that satisfaction could be found in completion and in understanding the land and animals. She observed the cowboy closely, noticing his patterns and routines. She began to anticipate his needs and respond with small gestures. She noticed his rare smiles and the way he acknowledged her silently. She began to understand that trust and care could be expressed in many ways, beyond words, and that these gestures were part of a growing bond. They shared quiet meals, sometimes discussing work, sometimes just sitting in silence. She began to understand that shared life did not require constant conversation, but required awareness, attention, and consideration. She felt that they were learning to communicate in unspoken ways, and that this created a sense of closeness. Winter preparations took most of their energy. She helped store food, repair buildings, and ensure that animals were ready for cold nights. She learned to act quickly and efficiently. She noticed her own growth in strength and confidence. She began to feel a sense of pride not only in survival but in mastery of skills and understanding of the ranch life. She began to dream more freely about the future, not extravagant dreams but practical hopes, about care for the land and animals and the life they were creating. She began to see herself as an equal partner in building a future rather than only a follower. She felt a sense of purpose and belonging that had been missing before she noticed the cowboy becoming slightly more open in small ways. He asked her opinion on minor matters. He allowed her to take the lead in small tasks. He shared brief memories and thoughts. She began to feel that their bond was deepening, not suddenly, but steadily. And naturally, through shared life and mutual respect, the land began to slow with the approach of winter. The days shortened, and the work shifted to preparation and maintenance. She learned to pace herself and the animals she began to appreciate. The rhythm of life on the ranch, the cyclical nature of work and rest, and the importance of careful observation and planning. She faced moments of fear and doubt. Nights when wind howled through the trees and snow threatened to block paths. Days when work seemed endless and she felt her strength tested. She began to rely on her judgment and skills. She realized that independence and connection could coexist. She was learning to face life with both courage and thoughtfulness. She discovered that love could grow in subtle ways, through small gestures, through shared effort, through understanding and patience. She noticed herself caring deeply for the cowboy and the land and animals. She began to understand that connection and affection could exist quietly and steadily over time. Evenings often brought reflection. They would sit side by side, watching the fading light, noticing animals preparing for night, and listening to the wind through trees. She began to feel a sense of comfort and belonging in these quiet moments. She understood that companionship could be gentle and enduring. Neighbors and community continued to influence her growth. She learned to observe social cues and to navigate relationships. She realized that her experience on the ranch was teaching her not only survival skills, but social skills and empathy. She felt a growing confidence in interacting with the wider world, She began to notice her own resilience. She could handle long hours' work with animals, maintain the house, and participate in community interactions. She felt pride in her own endurance and problem-solving. She realized that she had grown from the young girl who left town to a capable woman who could meet challenges head-on and at leaving the land ready for winter. She and the cowboy had repaired fences, stored food, and ensured the herd was protected. She could see the results of their effort and survival. She felt satisfaction not just in completing tasks, but in learning to navigate life alongside another human being. She realized that life on the ranch had become a shared journey of trust and care. She noticed herself smiling more in small ways, appreciating simple moments, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of animals, the quiet companionship of another human. She began to understand that joy could be quiet and steady, and that love could grow slowly through shared life and mutual understanding. She began to anticipate the seasons with confidence. Knowing what would be needed for winter and spring, she felt capable and prepared. She noticed the cowboy watching her with quiet approval. She realized that their bond was solidifying, not through words or dramatic gestures, but through shared effort, understanding, and small acts of care. Even as winter approached, she felt anticipation rather than fear. She knew challenges would come, but she also knew that she had grown to meet them. She felt a sense of partnership and companionship that had deepened steadily, realized that love and trust could develop quietly in shared life, and that their journey together was becoming stronger and more meaningful. Winter arrived, fully blanketing the ranch in snow. She woke to white fields and crisp air. The house was cold but steady. She learned to dress in layers and move carefully to protect herself from frost. She noticed the way the cowboy rose early and tended to animals even before she could see clearly in the dim light. The days were long and work never ending. She carried water, chopped wood, fed animals, and checked fences. She learned to plan carefully to conserve energy and manage time effectively. She felt her body strong and her mind clear. She began to understand the quiet rhythm of life in cold months. Cowboy watched her closely, not with scrutiny, but with quiet approval. He noticed her endurance, her attention to detail, her care for the animals. He sometimes offered guidance in short words or gestures. She learned to anticipate his directions and to act with confidence even when he did not speak. Bond between them deepened through shared effort. They moved together across snow-covered fields, feeding cattle, repairing buildings, or stacking wood. Their silent communication grew. She could sense when he needed help, when he was worried, or when he simply wanted quiet companionship. She realized that connection could be built in observation and care. She discovered moments of beauty even in harsh winter, the sun reflecting on snow, the patterns of frost on windows, the quiet of animals settled for night, the warmth of a fire after long work. She noticed small pleasures and began to find joy in subtle experiences. She understood that happiness did not have to be loud to be real. Visitors came less often in winter, but news still arrived. She listened and learned about opportunities for trade, for help, and for community interactions. She began to feel more confident, navigating relationships and conversations. She realized that her life on the ranch gave her strength and independence, even while she cared for the cowboy and Land. The cowboy began sharing more with her in quiet ways, simple stories about past seasons, about tasks learned over years, about animals and weather. She listened carefully, understanding that trust was slowly earned and that sharing life required patience. She began to feel a deeper sense of companionship, not based on words but on understanding and respect. She faced unexpected challenges. Winter storms tested her endurance. Trees fell, blocking paths. Animals strayed. She worked with the cowboy calmly and efficiently. She discovered a new depth of courage and problem-solving. She realized that survival depended not only on strength, but also on observation and careful planning. Her confidence grew with each challenge. She could lift heavy loads, act independently, care for animals, and make small decisions that affected the ranch. She felt pride in her own abilities and satisfaction in contributing meaningfully to the life they were building. She realized that she was more capable than she had ever imagined. Evenings brought quiet reflection. They would sit on the porch, listening to wind through trees and the soft sounds of animals preparing for night. She noticed the beauty of the stars and the stillness of land. She felt connection in the quiet and learned that companionship could be gentle, patient, and enduring. She began to notice small changes in the cowboy, to more smiles, more gestures of attention. He allowed her to lead on small tasks and shared memories in brief moments. She felt their bond strengthen not dramatically but steadily through shared life and mutual support. She realized that love and trust could grow slowly like the seasons. She found satisfaction in mastering new skills, caring for animals, maintaining the house, preparing for storms. She understood that endurance and attention to detail were acts of care. She began to feel that she had become a partner not only in work but in life. She realized that respect and affection were built through action. In observation, the ranch taught her resilience, patience, and attentiveness. She learned to anticipate needs, to act calmly, and to adjust to challenges. She felt capable of facing adversity with confidence. She also began to understand the quiet strength of the cowboy and the lessons he offered without words. She learned that partnership meant mutual reliance and respects. Small moments brought joy, the warmth of fire, the smell of cooked food, the quiet presence of someone who understood. She began to recognize that happiness could be quiet and steady. She noticed subtle expressions of care and learned to respond in kind. She understood that love could exist in actions as well as feelings. She reflected on her journey from the small town to this life. She realized how much she had grown from a young girl who obeyed rules and feared change to a woman who could endure hardships, think independently, and connect deeply. She felt pride in her endurance and gratitude for the lessons learned. Through shared struggle, the cowboy and she continued their work together in harmony. She anticipated his needs, and he noticed her efforts. She realized that trust was now strong and connection secure. They did not need grand gestures to know that. They relied on each other and cared for each other. They had built a partnership rooted in action, observation, patience, and shared life. She began to see the land as home, the fields, the barns, the animals, the rhythm of work and rest, the changing seasons. She realized that her life was intertwined with this place and the man who shared it. She felt grounded and capable and connected. She understood that belonging was created through effort, understanding, and commitment, past slowly revealing. The promise of spring, the snow melted, and the land showed green shoots of new life. She felt anticipation for the months ahead and confidence in her ability to face them. She noticed the cowboy working steadily and felt comfort in the rhythm and predictability of his presence. She understood that life was still uncertain, but that they could meet it together. She reflected on love and companionship. She realized that affection grew through shared experience, observation, patience, mutual respect. In small gestures of care, she felt a steady connection to the cowboy that was both comforting and sustaining. She began to feel that her fate was no longer uncertain, but shaped by daily choices and effort. The animals thrived and the land recovered. She and the cowboy prepared for planting and repair. She felt confidence in her skills and pride in her contributions. She noticed the bond they had built through seasons of work and reflection. She realized that life had taught her endurance, resilience. In quiet joy, she began to anticipate each day with purpose and attention. She planned work carefully, cared for animals thoughtfully, and maintained the house with diligence. She realized that survival and happiness could be found in attention to detail, care for others, and quiet companionship. She felt strength in herself and connection to the world around her, though. Cowboy and she continued to communicate through observation and small gestures. They shared understanding without constant words. They noticed each other, the animals, and the land. They acted with mutual respect and care. She realized that partnership and love could grow without ceremony, through steady attention and effort. By the end of winter, she felt transformed. From the young girl who had left a small town, she had become a capable, resilient woman, able to navigate the challenges of life on the ranch. She had learned trust, patience, endurance, and connection. She had discovered that love and companionship could grow quietly through shared life. Spring approached with new promise. She looked forward to the land coming alive, to new tasks and opportunities. She felt confident in her ability to meet challenges. She noticed the cowboy preparing for the season and felt connection and anticipation. She understood that their life together was written daily in choices, effort, and care, not predetermined by fate. She realized that their future was unwritten but strong. They had built a foundation of trust, respect, connection, and shared life. She felt capable of shaping their journey together. She knew that love and companionship grew in small gestures through endurance, observation, and mutual support. She felt grounded, confident, and ready for the seasons ahead. Spring fully returned, bringing warmth and life to the ranch. The snow had melted, leaving rich soil and new shoots. The air was fresh and full of promise. She woke early, noticing the sunlight on the fields, the soft sounds of animals beginning their day. She felt anticipation and readiness for the tasks ahead. Cowboy was already working, feeding the animals and checking fences. She joined him, moving steadily and deliberately. She carried water, mended fences, and prepared feed. She noticed her own strength and confidence growing with each task. She felt capable and alive. The bond between them continued to grow through quiet observation and shared effort. They moved in harmony across fields and barns. Their gestures and looks communicated understanding. She realized that their connection was built not on words, but on attention, care, and shared life. She felt trust and companionship deepening. She faced challenges, as always. The weather changed suddenly, storms came and animals strayed. She worked alongside the cowboy, calmly handling problems and protecting what was theirs. She discovered new layers of resilience and courage within herself. She began to see that difficulties could teach as much as they tested. Daily life brought small joys to the smell of fresh earth, the warmth of the sun on her back, the quiet sounds of animals. She noticed these moments and allowed herself to enjoy them. She realized that contentment could be found in simple awareness and presence. She felt grateful for the rhythm of life. Evenings brought reflection. They would sit together, listening to wind rustling trees and animals settling in for night. She noticed the changing colors of the sky and felt connection in the quiet. She began to understand that love and companionship could exist in stillness, and that partnership did not require constant words to be real. The cowboy began to share more stories in brief moments about work, about past seasons, about lessons learned. She listened carefully, understanding that trust was built gradually. She began to feel a stronger bond forming through these exchanges. She realized that shared history and experiences could deepen understanding. She discovered her own independence and capability. She could make decisions in emergencies, handle animals, repair tools, and maintain the house. She felt pride in herself and her ability to contribute. She began to understand that partnership required not only caring for others, but also confidence in her own abilities. The land and animals taught her patience and observation. She learned to notice small changes in weather, animal behavior, and growth of crops. She acted with care and foresight. She realized that understanding and attention were forms of love and respect. She felt capable of anticipating needs and responding thoughtfully. Small gestures between her and the cowboy continued to build trust. They offered help without being asked, shared quiet looks and moments of attention. She began to feel that their bond was deep and steady. She realized that love could grow subtly through shared life, and careful observation. Challenges tested them further. Unexpected storms and illness among animals required quick thinking and steady hands. She worked calmly and efficiently. She noticed the cowboy relying on her judgment and skill. She realized that their partnership was not equal in words, but in action. She felt proud of her ability to contribute meaningfully. She found beauty in ordinary moments. The way sunlight glinted on water, the gentle movement of leaves in the wind, the quiet settling of animals at night. She learned to appreciate these details as part of a fulfilling life. She felt gratitude and calm. The rhythm of life continued. She rose early, worked steadily, managed the house, cared for animals, and prepared for changes in weather. She felt endurance in body and mind. She noticed her own growth and felt a sense of satisfaction. She realized that living in harmony with the land required patience, attention, and care. She observed the cowboy carefully, noting patterns and gestures. She began to anticipate his needs and act without instruction. She noticed his rare smiles and subtle signs of approval. She realized that communication could be built without words, and that understanding and responsiveness were forms of love. Ranch taught her practical skills and emotional strength she learned to survive harsh conditions, manage animals, navigate relationships, and care for the land she felt. Proud of her abilities and confident in her judgment, she understood that partnership was built through shared work and mutual respect. Evenings were filled with quiet companionship. They would sit together on the porch, listening to animals and wind. She noticed the beauty of the night sky and the stillness of the land. She began to appreciate the comfort of shared silence and realized that companionship and connection could grow without words. She felt steady trust and care. She reflected on the journey from her old town to this life. She realized how much she had grown from a sheltered girl to a capable woman. She felt strength, resilience, and independence. She noticed how the cowboy had also become more open and shared small pieces of his life. She understood that trust and love could develop gradually through experience. Small victories brought joy. Completion of tasks, tending to animals, managing the house successfully, navigating challenges. She felt satisfaction and pride. She realized that endurance, effort, observation, and care could create stability and happiness. She felt connected to the land and the cowboy. The seasons changed slowly. She noticed patterns in the weather, growth of crops, and behavior of animals. She planned and acted with foresight. She felt competent and confident. She realized that life required constant attention and thoughtful action. She felt a sense of mastery over her surroundings and responsibilities. The bond between her and the cowboy was steady and resilient. They relied on each other's shared effort and understood each other without constant speech. She realized that partnership was strengthened through observation, action, and care. She felt deep trust and steady affection. Experienced moments of quiet joy in work and observation, the smell of fresh soil, the warmth of fire after cold work, the calm of animals at rest. She appreciated these moments and allowed herself to feel contentment. She realized that happiness could be simple and steady. They faced emergencies together, storms, illness of animals, unexpected challenges. She responded calmly and skillfully. She noticed the cowboy. Depending on her judgment, she realized that partnership was shared responsibility. In action, she felt pride and confidence. Evenings continued to bring reflection. They noticed stars, the changing sky, and quiet movements of animals. She felt connection and peace in the presence of the cowboy. She understood that companionship could exist in quiet observation and mutual care. She felt gratitude and trust. She discovered new patience, understanding, and empathy through life on the ranch. She learned to anticipate needs, manage emergencies, care for animals, and maintain the home. She realized that endurance and attentiveness were forms of love. She felt capable and valued. Small gestures and acts of care continued to strengthen their bond. They noticed each other, helped each other, anticipated needs. She felt steady affection and trust. She realized that love could grow gradually through daily life, shared effort, and attentiveness. She reflected on growth from sheltered girl to capable woman. She noticed confidence, resilience, independence. She felt gratitude for the lessons and challenges. She realized that life on the ranch had shaped her character and abilities. She felt connected to the land and the cowboy. Spring moved into summer, the land flourished, and the animals thrived. She continued her work with confidence and strength. She noticed the cowboy working steadily and felt connection in the shared effort. She realized that their partnership was grounded in trust, action, observation, and care. She experienced joy in small moments, warm sun on her back, the quiet of the fields, the calm of animals. She felt contentment in the steady rhythm of work and observation. She realized that happiness could be simple and connected to purpose and connection. Cowboy and she continued their partnership, building trust and understanding through shared effort. They acted with consideration, care, and attention. They noticed each other, responded to each other, and supported each other. She realized that love and companionship could grow steadily through lived experience. She felt confident facing the future. She had grown in skill, endurance, understanding, and care. She noticed the cowboy showing trust and subtle affection. She realized that their life together was strong and enduring. She felt grounded, confident, and connected. She understood that their fate was unwritten but shaped by their daily choices, effort, and care. She felt capable of building the future. They had created a steady bond based on shared experience, trust, observation, and care. She felt hope, anticipation, and readiness for the seasons ahead.